All right, so you're ready to get hands-on with this one.
Oh yeah, I love this stuff. This could be fun.
Because today we are talking about, well, crafting experiences with the
Yeah.
Japanese knives and katanas in
Awesome.
Tokyo. And we found this great article. It really digs into, like, what these experiences are actually like.
Yeah.
It's like a little portal into this world.
Yeah, it's a world that a lot of people are, like captivated by. The
Totally.
samurai tradition, the craftsmanship.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that really got me about this is it's not just like looking at stuff in a museum, although there is that element to it, right?
Right.
But it's like you're getting hands-on. You're actually participating in these traditions that are like hundreds of years old.
Yeah, it's that tangible connection to the history. It's one thing to read about it or see it in a movie,
Right.
but to actually you know, polish a blade or a sword that has this lineage,
Yeah.
going back centuries. It's pretty amazing.
And even like forging a kitchen knife using the same methods that they used to make samurai swords.
It's incredible.
It is pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
So through this deep dive, we want to illuminate not just like the how of these crafts,
Yeah.
but the kind of like cultural weight these blades hold in Japan.
Yeah, the significance, yeah.
Yeah, and if you're maybe thinking about actually like going and booking one of these experiences,
Absolutely.
we'll give you some practical considerations about what to know before you go.
Yes, we'll delve into the practical aspects as well because the article does a great job of outlining those.
Totally. So to start with, why is Tokyo such a great place for this?
Well, Tokyo has historically been a hub for, master craftspeople in blade making. And that tradition has really been preserved
Yeah.
over the centuries. So you have this concentration of incredibly skilled artisans in the city and in the surrounding areas as well.
And it's not just skilled work, right?
Absolutely not.
Like, I think the article really makes a point of saying, like,
Yeah.
Japanese blades, and I'm talking everything from, like, a magnificent katana to a humble kitchen knife. Like, they have this cultural weight
Yeah.
that goes beyond just their utility. Like, they're imbued with, like, spiritual and artistic essence.
Absolutely.
It's just woven into the fabric of Japan's history.
Right, like think about the katana, for example.
Yeah.
It's considered one of Japan's imperial treasures.
Wow.
Alongside the mirror and the jewel, that's how revered it is.
So to get a little bit practical, like if you're thinking about booking one of these experiences, what are some things that you need to know before you go?
The first thing, and this is really important, is to make reservations well in advance, especially if you're
Oh.
traveling during peak tourist seasons. These workshops are often small, intimate,
Right.
led by master craftspeople, and there's limited capacity, so you can imagine the demand.
Absolutely. What about like, what do I need to bring? Like, how do I need to dress?
Well, comfortable clothing is key, something that you're not afraid to get a little bit, dusty or dirty,
Makes sense.
because you are working in a workshop.
Yeah,
And closed-toe shoes are also essential for safety reasons.
good point. Okay. And language, like, is this something that, if I don't speak Japanese, will I be okay?
The article does mention that English-speaking guides are often available,
Okay.
but it's always a good idea to have a translation app on your phone as a backup,
Just in case.
just in case. Because, when you're dealing with these intricate crafts, the nuances of language can be really important.
Absolutely. And, you're going to be picking up a lot of new vocabulary.
Yeah.
So it's probably helpful to have that translation app. Okay, so one thing I would definitely want to know before I booked is like, if I forge a knife or even just polish a katana, can I even bring that home with me?
Yeah, that's a really crucial point. Customs regulations vary widely
Yeah.
from country to country, so it's absolutely essential to research those rules thoroughly before you even book an experience, because you don't want to go through all that effort
Yeah.
and then not be able to bring your creation home.
That would be heartbreaking. All right. What about physical limitations? Like, is this something that anybody can do, or do you need to be kind of...
That's a good question. The article does caution that some of these crafting experiences can be quite physically demanding.
Right.
You might be dealing with heat, hammering,
Yeah.
handling tools. So if you have any mobility concerns, or if you're thinking about bringing young children,
Yeah.
it's really important to check with the workshop directly about suitability and any age restrictions.
That's a really good point. And what about money? Like, should I bring cash?
Yeah, they do recommend bringing cash, especially for any optional purchases you might want to make.
Okay.
Smaller crafts or things like that.
Right.
Often in these more traditional settings, cash is the preferred method.
Makes sense.
And finally, it's a good idea to build in a little flexibility in your itinerary,
Oh, yeah.
because these immersive experiences can sometimes run longer than scheduled,
Makes sense.
especially if you really get into it.
You get lost in it, yeah.
which I imagine would be pretty easy to do.
Totally. Okay, so let's actually get into these experiences.
Let's do it.
The article starts off with a full-fledged katana sword experience.
Okay.
This is right in central Tokyo.
All right.
And this sounds like it's a good one for history buffs.
Right.
Or katana enthusiasts who might be a little bit pressed for time.
Exactly. And what I found really interesting about this one is it combines a visit to a museum with hands-on experience.
Okay.
So you start at the Japanese Sword Museum.
Okay.
And you get to see an incredible collection of historic katanas, some dating back to the 8th century.
Wow.
To the Heian, Kamakura, and Nambukucho periods. So we're talking 8th to 14th centuries.
Yeah.
Some of these are even national treasures.
Wow.
It's amazing. So you get a real sense of the history and the significance of these swords.
That's incredible. And then after the museum?
Then you go to the Nagaoka Nihonto Kinmojo workshop, and it's in the Asakusabashi neighborhood.
Okay.
And this is where master polisher Yasumasa Nagaoka practices his craft.
Okay.
So he has this really inspiring workshop, with various katanas in different stages of completion, whetstones, reference materials. And he teaches you how to appreciate a katana through its shape, the hamon, which is the hardened edge pattern, and the jigane, which is the steel pattern. So it's like learning the language of the sword.
I love that. And do you actually get to participate in any of the polishing?
You do. You get to witness his incredibly meticulous polishing technique.
Okay.
And then you even get to try eritogi, which is like the rough polishing on a practice blade that's already rusted.
Okay.
And it gives you a real appreciation for why they say, these swords were only polished maybe once a century.
Wow.
Because it's such a painstaking process.
Yeah.
It can take up to 10 days to polish a single sword.
Wow.
Using progressively finer whetstones.
So this one's really focused on kind of understanding and appreciating and preserving this tradition.
Exactly.
Rather than the act of creation.
Yeah, it's more about appreciation and preservation.
Okay, so the second one sounds a lot more hands-on.
It does.
This is where you get to craft a handmade kitchen knife of traditional tamahagane steel.
Yes. This one's outside of central Tokyo. It's in Ohm City, which is about 80 minutes from Shinjuku by train.
This sounds like a great option for the culinary enthusiasts.
Absolutely.
Who want a really unique and practical souvenir.
Yeah, because you get to make something that you can actually use.
Yeah.
And take home and cook with.
I love that. So tell me about this workshop.
Okay. So this workshop is run by a husband and wife team.
Okay.
Sukehira Hirata, who's a master blacksmith.
Okay.
And he completed a 13-year apprenticeship.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's incredible.
That's dedication.
It is. And his wife, Nodoka Hirata,
yeah.
is believed to be the only female mirage, which is furnace master in history.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
Okay, so what do they teach you? What's the process like?
So they teach the traditional tatara forging technique,
okay.
which is considered the pinnacle of Japanese iron forging.
Yeah.
And this technique was even depicted in the Studio Ghibli film Princess Mononoke.
Oh, wow.
So you get a sense of how historical and significant this technique is. And you start with a tsunobe, which is like a pre-forged piece of tamahagane steel.
Okay.
And then you learn hizukuri forging, which is hammering the heated steel to shape the knife's cutting edge.
And is that hard to do?
I imagine it takes a lot of skill and precision, but, under the guidance of these masters, I'm sure it's an incredible learning experience.
Absolutely. So what happens after you forge the knife?
After that comes tsuchioki and yakiire.
Okay.
And that's where they coat the blade in this clay and charcoal mixture.
Okay.
And it's very specific.
Right.
And that helps to control how the blade cools when it's quenched in water.
Okay.
And that's what gives the knife its sharpness and its flexibility.
So it's both strong and sharp.
Exactly. And then they engrave it with your name and ship it to you.
So cool.
It's so cool. It's a functional piece of art.
That's incredible. All right. What about number 3? What's the third experience?
This one's also at the Harada Swordsmith workshop in Ohm City.
Okay.
And it's to craft a handmade small katana sword of traditional tamahagane steel.
I love that.
Yeah, so you're working with the same amazing team using those same authentic tatara forging techniques.
So this one seems like it would be more for martial arts enthusiasts.
Yeah, I think so.
Or people who just like the katana as a display piece.
Right, because it's smaller than a full-size katana.
Yeah.
So it's more suitable for display than for, actual combat.
Right.
But it's still a complete forging experience.
Okay.
You start with the tsunobe.
Yeah.
You do the hizukuri forging.
Yeah.
And Sukehira teaches you how to use gravity to your advantage when hammering.
So cool.
And then, of course, the tsuchiyoki and yankei to get that flexibility and sharpness.
Yeah.
And in the end, you have a small katana engraved with your name, and you even get to choose from like 3 different handle styles.
Oh, wow.
And then they ship it to you.
Incredible.
It's incredible.
Okay, so the fourth one.
Yes.
This is a little different. This is polishing a genuine katana sword with a master polisher.
Right, and this one is closer to central Tokyo.
Okay.
It's in Sedagai Ward, near Shibuya.
Okay, cool.
So you're at the Bunaido workshop with master polisher Masaru Namato.
Cool.
And there are only like 100 professional katana polishers in all of Japan.
Wow.
So you're learning from one of the very best.
That's a really rare opportunity. So what's the experience like?
So first, Nomoto-sensei talks about the history of the katana.
Okay.
How it evolved from like straight blades to the curved swords we see today.
Yeah.
And how they were symbols of the samurai's identity and honor.
Right.
And then he demonstrates uritogi, the rough polishing,
Okay.
and uchigomori, which is the mirror-like finish polishing. And he explains that the whole process can take 2 to 3 weeks per sword.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, using at least 7 different webstones. It's incredible.
It's mind-blowing. And do you get to actually try polishing?
You do. Under his guidance, you get to try polishing the steel.
So cool.
And then you have a traditional tea ceremony with him, which I think is a really nice touch.
I love that.
Yeah, to ask questions and just like connect on a personal level.
And you can even buy stuff from his workshop.
You can. Yeah, you can purchase small, traditionally crafted knives.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a really unique opportunity.
Yeah. Okay, so the fifth one is like the furthest one out, right?
Yes, this one is up in Saitama Prefecture
Okay.
in Kamikawa. It's called Learn the Rich History of Katana Japanese Swords from a Swordsmith.
Cool.
So you go up to Katanakaji Fusahiro, which is the forge of swordsmith Fusahiro Shimojina.
Okay.
And he actually got into sword making after seeing an 800-year-old sword as a teenager,
Oh, wow.
which is pretty amazing.
That's really cool. So this one seems like it's really focused on like the historical and spiritual aspects.
Yes, definitely.
The sword making.
He starts off with a talk about the history of Japanese swords
Okay.
and their connection to Shinto.
Right.
And there are even like Shinto ropes and an altar in the workshop.
Wow.
And he wears white during the forging process.
Okay.
So, there's that spiritual element there. And then you learn about the balance of strength, flexibility, and cutting ability in a Japanese sword.
Yeah.
And then you get to see tamahagane steel forging,
Okay.
where they heat the metal to 1300 degrees Celsius and hammer it.
Wow.
It's pretty spectacular. You can actually participate.
Oh, really?
You can operate the bellows
Cool.
and try hammering the hot steel.
So cool. And then at the end, you get to hold a sword in the forge.
Yeah, they give you a lesson on how to appreciate a sword.
Cool.
Looking at the shape, the layering, the patterns. And then, yes, you get a photo op holding a sword in the forge.
That's incredible.
It is.
So, like, looking across all 5 of these experiences, what are some of the common threads?
Well, I think what they all offer is this direct connection
Yeah.
to living traditions. You're not just observing, you're participating in techniques
Right.
and philosophies that have been passed down for centuries. And it's not just about the blade,
Yeah.
It's about the wisdom and the appreciation
Right.
for Japanese craftsmanship that you gain.
Yeah, it's like a visceral link to the past.
Exactly.
I love that.
And I think it's important to note that these master craftspeople are becoming increasingly rare.
Yeah.
So by participating in these experiences, you're contributing to the preservation of these arts.
That's a really good point. It's almost like you're becoming part of this like chain of tradition.
Absolutely. You're becoming part of the story.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So I guess to kind of wrap things up here,
Yeah.
there's this whole spectrum of experiences available.
Right.
For anyone who's interested in this world,
Yeah.
whether you're a history buff, a culinary enthusiast, a martial art fan,
An art lover.
an art lover,
Yeah.
there's something for everybody.
Absolutely. And we hope that this deep dive has given you a good overview and maybe even inspired you to explore this further.
Totally. So if you're planning a trip to Japan,
Yeah.
maybe think about adding one of these experiences to your itinerary.
Yeah, because it's a really unique way to understand Japanese culture.
Yeah,
And like the article says, to forge your own Japanese story.
I love that. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Thanks for having me.